My uncle left his entire fortune to whoever could solve his riddle, and our family turned savage. Uncle Garrett was the black sheep who'd made millions in tech before most people knew what cryptocurrency was. While we scraped by on dead-end jobs and credit cards, he lived in a 7-bedroom mansion with a wine cellar worth more than houses and a garage of cars pricier than my yearly salary. When he died at 52, I expected everything to go to some obscure charity, his last middle finger to relatives who treated him like a pariah. Instead, his lawyer read a will that sounded like a dare. To my greedy relatives who only call when they need money, prove you're worth more than your failures. Solve my riddle. Claim everything. Fail, and it all burns while you watch. Each of us got an envelope, where shadows dance but cast no light, where silence screams throughout the night, where memory lives but time stands still. Find the key to my last will. We actually worked together at first, darkroom, study, wine cellar, attic, then tore through the mansion like looters, lifting rugs, prying floorboards, checking every hollow book, even draining the pool. Nothing. That's when we turned on each other. Patricia hired a PI. Dylan bribed the housekeeper. Mom started arriving at dawn. Finn hid cameras. Patricia found a loose floorboard under Garrett's bed and quietly pocketed a metal lockbox with photos, a tarnished key, and a second note. Finn's cameras caught it. In the kitchen showdown, Dylan dumped her purse, the box burst open, and photographs scattered our old lake house, Garrett's first apartment, the sketchy carnival where he'd saved for college, and an abandoned warehouse our grandfather used for storm night ghost stories. Patricia went white. He wouldn't, she whispered. But the key wasn't for a bank box. Its wear marks said otherwise. We drove 43 minutes to the family warehouse. Rusted siding, broken windows, the sour smell of swamp. A heavy new padlock gleamed on the door. Dylan's key turned cleanly. Inside, the space had been gutted and remade, white floors, fresh drywall, professional lighting. In the exact center, a round table with 5 chairs, each holding a manila envelope in Garrett's careful hand. My note read, "Before you stands your final test. One truth will put your greed to rest. Choose wisely what you value most, or join me as a warning ghost." Beneath it, a typed confession of something our family had twisted for 15 years. As kids, we'd been playing hide-and-seek in that warehouse when a rotten section of floor collapsed. 8-year-old Dylan fell into the basement and ripped his leg open on rusted machinery. While the rest of us ran screaming, 13-year-old Garrett climbed down, tourniqueted the wound with his favorite shirt, kept Dylan conscious, and saved his life. But Patricia, jealous, 14, already gifted at manipulation, told the adults that Garrett had dared Dylan to jump, taunted him as a coward, and caused the fall. Our parents believed her. Garrett became the family menace. We looked up and saw professional cameras in each corner. A voice filled the room. Garrett, recorded days before his death. If you're hearing this, you learned the truth about what happened. Congratulations. You've also just confessed on camera. Patricia begged the lens. Garrett's voice hardened. You stole 15 years of my relationships with your lie. That betrayal is worth exactly $15 million. Screens lit with estate documents showing Patricia as beneficiary if she fulfilled conditions. A public confession to everyone she'd told, beginning at their parents' graves. Funding a foundation for falsely accused children. Spending her life undoing the harm. Fail. And the money goes to charity, and her confession video goes everywhere. Finn erupted. Why should we suffer for Patricia's lie?
Garrett's recording anticipated him. None of us had ever asked Dylan what he remembered. Dylan's envelope held a $2 million trust and a letter that made him sob. Garrett apologizing for never telling him the truth and urging him to seek the therapy our family should have provided. Mom's envelope held a single sentence. A mother who doesn't defend all her children equally doesn't deserve wealth or forgiveness. Finn got $50,000 for college and a blunt nudge to question narratives. Mine made me executor of a separate $3 million fund for truth-tellers who find their courage late but still act. Then the mechanism snapped shut. These cameras will upload to all your social accounts in 1 hour unless someone takes full responsibility. Patricia promised to confess. Dylan, shaking, said it was 17 years too late, but his voice held the shape of forgiveness. Mom stepped into the frame and did something I'd never seen, took responsibility. She admitted she'd chosen an easy story over truth and let Garrett carry the cost for the rest of his life. The cameras clicked off. Silence spread through the spotless warehouse like fog. What followed changed us. Patricia launched the Garrett Thorne Foundation for wrongly accused children. Its first case cleared a boy expelled on a jealous classmate's lie. Dylan donated his trust, started therapy, and began speaking about scapegoating and trauma. Mom built a hospital memorial garden for Garrett and volunteered, reading to kids in ER bays. Finn studied criminal justice and wrote his thesis on the psychology of family scapegoating. I kept my inheritance under strict conditions. Tell true stories that help break cycles like ours. That's why I'm telling this now. A certified letter from Seattle opened the next chapter. A half-uncle we didn't know, Thomas, our grandfather's son from his first marriage, had died. He left me a brass key and an address in Montana with a note. The real riddle was never money.
It was whether your generation would choose truth over comfort. The key opened a century-old log lodge outside Bozeman. Inside, walls of photos of Garrett laughing, tinkering, confiding in Thomas, a polished oak table, a leather journal. Thomas had documented the family's rot for decades, our grandfather reinventing himself after abandoning his first family, our father covering up a college hit-and-run while an innocent classmate went to prison, our mother stealing from her employer and framing a coworker. Garrett discovered these files as a teen and started asking the wrong questions. The troublemaker label was a smokescreen to discredit him. Thomas gathered police reports, transcripts, ledgers, airtight proof, but never acted. I was a coward, his final entry read. I feared losing the only family I had. A phone number waited at the bottom. Detective Rodriguez answered. Statutes of limitation had run out, but victims were alive. Martin Espinoza, the student who served 2 years for Dad's accident, had lost his scholarship, fiancé, and future. Louise Chen, framed by Mom, had spent decades working minimum wage with a criminal record. Using Thomas's archive and the Foundation's lawyers, we cleared Louise's name, paid restitution, and helped Martin buy a home and fund a scholarship for formerly incarcerated people. Then I sat with our parents. Mom post-stroke but lucid saw the documents, mouthed the names Martin and Louise, and scrawled with a shaking hand, "Tell them I'm sorry." Dad, lost in dementia, flashed clear for 5 minutes, confessed the hit and run, and said he'd visited Martin in prison to soothe his own guilt. The clarity vanished. The puzzle pieces resumed. We kept going. We called co-workers fired on rumors, neighbors ostracized for questioning, classmates bullied into silence. Each conversation was a small surgery, cutting away my fantasy of a good family and replacing it with something honest. Then Patricia phoned from Garrett's mansion. She'd found a hidden compartment in the headboard with unsent letters. To me, he'd seen me try to tell the truth at 12 and kept quiet to protect me from isolation. To Dylan, advice about treatments he'd researched in secret. To Mom, I forgive you for believing the easier story. To Dad, I know your crimes. I chose to be different, but it cost me my family. The last letter 1 week before he died said he'd ignored symptoms because he was used to being the problem, and the riddle wasn't punishment, it was a doorway. If you're reading this, you chose truth. Let the next generation be healthy. Thomas's lawyer had one more request. Run a retreat he'd built, the Garrett Thorne Center for Family Truth. I moved to Montana and opened the doors in January. We host week-long programs for families tangled in false accusations and generational lies, therapy, mediation, legal advocacy. Patricia visits with foundation updates. Dylan is now a trauma counselor on staff. Finn helps with legal advocacy while finishing school. Mom passed peacefully, her last words to a nurse. Tell Martin and Louise I'm sorry. Dad no longer knows us, but he asks about a boy named Martin. Detective Rodriguez called again, with a ripple effect. Louise's old employer issued a public apology and compensation. A wider audit uncovered 17 similar cases from the same era. Louise, now 71, volunteers at the center. Martin visits yearly to speak. The hardest part wasn't prison. It was the 40 years after. Last week, a hand-delivered envelope arrived at our front desk, a photograph of a young woman I didn't recognize in front of a familiar, unfamiliar house. On the back, Garrett had a daughter, Emma, 22, waiting her whole life to meet her family and to learn why her father never called. An address in Portland. A number. I dialed. The phone picked up on the first ring. "Is this about my father?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "I'm your cousin, and I have a lot to tell you." Some family stories don't end. They turn into work choosing truth over comfort, again and again, until the cycle finally breaks.